Have you ever imagined sitting in the front row of a plane, feeling invisible and powerless, only to witness someone you love treated unfairly before your very eyes? What would you do if a stranger, someone who is supposed to serve and protect, struck your child for no reason other than being where they belonged? Would you sit in silence, or would you act on a seemingly ordinary flight? A 6-year-old girl, daughter of a black CEO, was slapped in the face while seated in first class. The cabin froze. Passengers whispered, some shocked, some uncertain. And in that moment, every person on board had a choice to ignore the injustice, to intervene, or to do nothing at all. But what if the power to act was literally in your hands? Imagine yourself in her shoes, or in the shoes of her mother, holding a system capable of immediate justice. The question is no longer hypothetical. How far would you go to protect dignity? Could a single act of courage change an entire industry? Join us as we dive into this remarkable story, where silence meets action, courage meets accountability, and a child shows the world the true weight of justice. Like, share, and subscribe to witness a journey that could make you rethink what it means to stand up for what's right. The cabin smelled faintly of brewed coffee and leather. Soft jazz played through the overhead speakers, blending with the low hum of the engines as Flight AV221 taxied from the gate at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. In seat 2A, a little girl with honey-brown skin and tightly braided hair clutched a stuffed airplane toy. Her name was Aria Thompson, 6 years old, wide-eyed, curious about the clouds she would soon touch. She loved airplanes, not because her mother built them, but because they felt like freedom. Across the aisle, a flight attendant with a practiced smile stopped beside her. Rebecca Sloan, the lead attendant, looked down at the child and frowned slightly. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice clipped and polite. "This section is for our first-class passengers." Aria looked up, confused. "Mom said I could sit here. She bought my seat." Her small voice carried a kind of calm certainty that only children have the belief that truth should be enough. Rebecca's smile tightened. "I'm sure your mom made a mistake. Why don't you come with me?" "Okay." She reached for the toy in Aria's hands, perhaps to guide her out. Aria flinched, pulling it back. The woman's tone sharpened. "Young lady, don't ignore me." Before anyone could process what happened next, there was a sound sharp, shocking, that sliced through the hum of the cabin. A slap. Gas filled the aisle. A businessman dropped his phone. A woman in 2C muttered, "Oh my God." Aria's head turned slightly from the impact. She didn't cry. Her tiny fingers tightened around the toy plane. She looked straight ahead, blinking once, then twice. The jazz music stopped. The world stopped. From row 5, a man whispered, "Did she just hit that kid?" No one moved. No one wanted to believe it had happened in first class, in 2025, on an airline that advertised, "Where every journey matters." The captain's voice crackled faintly from the cockpit, unaware. "Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff." Rebecca straightened her uniform, breath shaky, eyes darting around as if realizing what she'd done. She hissed quietly, "She grabbed me first." No one had seen that. And even if she had, the justification felt hollow in the silence that followed. At that moment, in row 3, Dr. Maya Thompson raised her head. She'd been reviewing documents on her tablet flight path data for her company's new AI engine safety module. The sound she'd just heard wasn't something you misheard. It was instinct. Her body went cold, her pulse steady, too steady. She stood up slowly. "Excuse me," she said, voice even. The other passengers turned as she moved forward. Rebecca froze. "Ma'am, please return to your seat. We're about to depart." Maya's tone didn't rise. "That's my daughter." The flight attendant's face drained of color. "I didn't realize you didn't have to," Maya said quietly. "You only had to be kind." For a long second, nothing moved. The engines idled. The cabin felt like a courtroom waiting for the gavel. Arya turned, meeting her mother's eyes. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" Maya knelt beside her, brushing a curl from the child's forehead. "No, baby," she said softly. "You did everything right." She lifted the smartwatch on her wrist silver, thin, a prototype she designed herself. On its screen glowed a single word, "Standby." Her thumb hovered over it. She didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, she looked at the flight attendant who had just struck a 6-year-old. Rebecca took a step back. "Please, ma'am, let's not escalate this. I can move you to another seat." "Another seat," Maya repeated, as if testing the absurdity of it. Around them, passengers pretended to scroll their phones, to hide behind digital glass. One man started recording. The captain's door cracked open. Captain James Rourke, gray-haired and weary, peered out. "Is there a problem up here?" Maya didn't look at him. She was still staring at Rebecca. Rourke sighed. "Let's all calm down. We'll sort this out after takeoff." That sentence after takeoff settled like a weight on Maya's chest. She'd heard variations of it her whole life. After. Later. Not now. She smiled faintly, almost to herself. "We won't be taking off just yet." She turned her wrist, her voice a whisper only Arya could hear. "Remember what I told you about truth?" "Sweetheart," Arya nodded, "that it listens if we make it listen?" "Good girl," Maya said, and this time she pressed the screen. A soft chime. Somewhere deep in the network of the Federal Aviation Administration's Ethics Division, an alert began to pulse. Red Ethra protocol activated. Within 90 seconds, a ripple would move across control towers from Atlanta to Seattle. Within 2 minutes, 42 airports across the continental United States would receive a synchronized hold all departures order. And for the first time in aviation history, the sky itself would stop because one little girl had been slapped. For a full second after Dr. Maya Thompson pressed the button on her smartwatch. Nothing happened. No alarms, no flashing lights. Only the quiet hum of air conditioning and the whisper of disbelief rippling through the cabin. But then, something subtle shifted. The seatbelt sign blinked twice. The intercom clicked, and the engines began to idle. The rhythm of the airplane changed as if the jet itself had taken a breath and decided to hold it. Maya remained standing, calm, controlled. Her posture carried the stillness of someone who had prepared for this moment her entire life without realizing it. Rebecca Sloan, the flight attendant, was pale now. "Ma'am, please sit down. You're disrupting the flight crew." Maya turned her gaze toward her, steady and unwavering. "I'm not disrupting anything. The system is—" She spoke it softly, but it carried weight. Passengers started murmuring. The man in 3A, the one who had recorded the slap, lifted his phone higher, the red dot of recording steady. Somewhere behind him, a nervous laugh broke the tension, then silence again. The captain's voice came through the overhead speaker, slightly tense. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief technical delay. Please remain seated." Rebecca tried to regain authority. "It's just a temporary communication glitch. Nothing to worry about." But her voice trembled. She didn't know that every word spoken in that moment was being transcribed live inside a secure network at the Federal Aviation Administration's Ethics Division in Washington. D. C. Inside the FAA hub, Eli Carter, senior systems engineer, leaned toward his monitor. His fingers froze mid-typing when he saw the red blinking line, "Aethra Protocol Live Trigger Verified." He swallowed hard. Oh my God. She actually did it. Across the room, his supervisor looked up. "Who did what, Dr. Thompson?" "She just activated the live ethics cascade." The supervisor blinked. "That's not possible. It hasn't been field tested yet." "It's possible," Eli said quietly, tapping the screen. "Because she built it." Within 60 seconds, automated alerts cascaded through interconnected FAA nodes Atlanta, Dallas, Denver, Phoenix, Chicago, Seattle. Each message identical ethics hold. "Flight Av Ben Priority Incident. Do not depart." At Air Vista Airlines headquarters. A control room supervisor frowned at her dashboard. "Why are we getting FAA ethics flags from ATL? They're halting all outbound traffic." Another operator leaned closer. "Wait 42 airports just synced that command." "That's not possible unless," her voice dropped, "unless it came from Aethra's system." Back on the plane, Maya hadn't moved. Arya's small hand was wrapped around her mother's fingers now. The child's voice was soft but certain. "Mommy, it feels quiet." Maya looked down, her expression tender but alert. That's because everyone's waiting to see what truth sounds like. The air around them felt thick, almost sacred. The hum of the engines lowered again. Even gravity seemed to pause. Rebecca adjusted her blazer, trying to look composed, but guilt radiated from her. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she stammered. "It was just a misunderstanding." "Then you should say that," Maya replied gently. "Not to me, to her." The flight attendant hesitated. She crouched slightly beside the child, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "I didn't mean." Arya looked at her for a long moment, eyes clear, unreadable. "My mom says when people say sorry, they have to change something." Rebecca's lips parted, but no words came out. She stood quickly, muttering, "I'll be in the galley." The man in 3A whispered to another passenger, "Who is this woman?" A passenger from row 4 replied softly, "Dr. Maya Thompson. She runs that aerospace company, Aethra. I saw her on CNBC last month." "Wait," the man said, his eyes widening. "The woman who built the ethics AI for the FAA." The words spread like an electric current through the cabin. Within minutes, half the passengers knew who she was. In the control tower, an operator spoke urgently into her headset. "We've got a situation on AV221. The ethics cascade's been activated. We need confirmation from FAA command." The reply came fast. "Hold all departures within 300 miles. Maintain position until further notice. Protocol Z-level authority engaged." Z-level authority, an emergency category that no commercial airline had ever seen before. It overrode corporate management, even local FAA control. Only one person in the country had that clearance, Dr. Maya L. Thompson. Maya took her seat slowly beside Arya, her heartbeat steady, her hands folded in her lap. She looked out the window at the jet bridge still connected. The world outside moved as if in slow motion. Ground staff pointing, phones ringing, agents rushing toward the plane. She turned slightly toward Arya. "You okay?" Baby Arya nodded, still clutching her toy airplane. "Are they mad at us?" Maya smiled faintly. "They're not mad, sweetheart. They're just awake now." Behind them, passengers started whispering, their tones shifting from judgment to curiosity to something like respect. Then, a soft vibration from Maya's watch. "Incoming FAA Secure Link, Eli Carter." She accepted the call quietly, Eli, Maya, what did you do? His voice was half awe, half panic. I didn't do anything. The system did what it was built to do. You just froze 42 airports. I've got department heads calling me from every state. This is going to shake the entire network. Maya's tone was calm. Good. Maybe it needed to be shaken. She heard the pause on the other end. Then Eli said softly, "You know they'll come after you for this." "I know," she said, glancing at her daughter. "But at least they'll have to look me in the eye when they do." 23 minutes later, the cabin door opened. 3 uniformed FAA agents stepped on board, 2 men and 1 woman, wearing Navy jackets marked Ethics Division. The lead agent scanned the cabin, his eyes landing on Maya. "Dr. Thompson." "Yes. I'm Agent Lopez. We need to debrief your crew." Maya nodded slightly toward Rebecca, who stood rigid near the galley. "Start with her." Rebecca tried to speak, but her words stumbled over one another. It was just a misunderstanding." The agent raised a hand. "Ma'am, you'll have an opportunity to explain everything. For now, please step outside." As they escorted Rebecca out, no one in the cabin clapped or spoke. The silence itself was the applause. The captain, still seated in the cockpit doorway, exhaled heavily. "Dr. Thompson, what exactly did you trigger?" Maya turned her head slightly. "Accountability?" He blinked, unsure if it was an answer or warning. Down the runway, several aircrafts were being held at their gates. Pilots radioed in confusion. "Tower. Confirmed delay, reason ethics hold," came the response. "Pending verification from Washington." The phrase spread through the aviation network like wildfire. "Ethics hold." Pilots repeated it. Ground crew whispered it. Executives began dialing emergency numbers. Inside the Air Vista Corporate Command Center, the CEO of the airline slammed his fist on the desk. "Find out who authorized that hold. We can't ground half the eastern seaboard over one passenger dispute." His deputy turned pale. "Sir, it's not one passenger. It's Dr. Maya Thompson." The CEO froze. "The Ethro woman." "Yes, sir." He sank into his chair, realization washing over him. "God help us." Back on flight AV-221, Arya leaned against her mother's arm, finally letting her head rest there. "Mommy," she whispered. "Did the button make them stop?" Maya brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's cheek. "Yes, baby." It made the world stop long enough to listen. Outside the cabin windows, the sun dipped lower, bathing the tarmac in gold. The passengers sat in silence, not the silence of fear, but the silence of awe, the kind that happens when people witness something bigger than themselves. For the first time in aviation history, every control tower, every command hub, and every executive suite across the country was forced to confront a question no one had ever programmed into their systems. What happens when a mother refuses to accept silence as an answer? And above the frozen engines of Flight AVU-1, the sky itself seemed to wait, because justice was taxiing onto the runway. Inside the FAA Ethics Division headquarters in Washington, D.C., fluorescent lights buzzed softly above rows of glowing monitors. The hum of air conditioners mixed with hurried footsteps and whispered disbelief. The red alert banner pulsing across every screen read, "ETHRA Protocol Active Cascade. Live Incident in ATL." Eli Carter rubbed his temples, disbelief etched into every line of his face. He'd helped design the framework for this system with Maya years ago, when it was just a theoretical safeguard against abuse of power in the air. It wasn't supposed to go live yet, not until full federal approval. But Maya Thompson had never been one for waiting when truth was on the line. "Get me a direct feed from Flight AV-221, Eli said, leaning over the shoulder of an analyst. The young man hesitated. "Sir, that's encrypted." It's not part of standard access. It is now. Eli entered his override credentials. The screen filled with the interior of the aircraft, rows of passengers frozen in anxious silence. An open cabin door. Sunlight slanting across faces both curious and afraid. In the foreground, Dr. Maya Thompson sat beside her daughter, hand resting protectively over the child's toy airplane. "She really did it," Eli whispered. "Who is supervisor?" asked. "Maya." She triggered the cascade. The room fell quiet. Then the supervisor murmured, 42 airports have locked. That's over 700 flights grounded. The secretary's going to call any minute. He already has, Eli said, glancing at his vibrating phone. Across the screen appeared SEC Transportation, Priority Link. He answered, "Yes, sir." A deep voice filled his headset. "Carter, what the hell's going on, sir?" The cascade was activated under Section 9 of the Ethics Act live field condition. The system recognized a high-severity discrimination flag, confirmed by biometric data and witness reports from within the cabin. "Are you telling me one passenger complaint just shut down the national grid?" "Not one complaint," Eli said quietly. "Dr. Maya Thompson." There was a long pause. Then the voice said, softer now, "The Ethra Thompson." "Yes, sir." Then we proceed carefully. Very carefully. At that same moment, inside the control tower at Atlanta, a chain of controllers was fielding questions from pilots stranded at the gates. Screens showed blinking red markers spreading across the country: Dallas, Chicago, Phoenix, Denver, Los Angeles. The aviation map looked like a patient's pulse under distress. "Ground all flights until the FAA Ethics Division lifts the hold." A supervisor barked. "But why? What triggered it? An ethics violation on Air Vista 221. A pause. "A violation bad enough to freeze 42 airports." "Yes." The supervisor's tone was grave. "And it involves a child." The radios went silent after that. Back on flight AV221, Maya's watch pulsed softly again. A line of text scrolled across the small display. FAA link established. Secure channel. She touched the screen once. "Eli." His voice came through, slightly distorted. "Maya, I have your live feed. You're on every monitor in the division right now. Then you can see everything I see." He exhaled. "I see a very angry flight attendant being questioned by federal agents." Maya's lips curved slightly. "Good. Then the system works. You understand what's happening out here. You've grounded commercial aviation across half the country. This will make every network in America lose its mind within the hour." "Let them," she said. "Maybe they'll finally listen." Her gaze shifted to Arya, who was tracing circles on the window with her finger. A child was assaulted in a premium seat because someone decided she didn't belong there. "I built this system so no one could hide behind uniforms and policy again." Eli's voice softened. "And you built it, knowing someday you might have to use it." Maya smiled faintly. "I hoped I wouldn't." He hesitated before speaking. "You know the backlash will be ugly. They'll question your motives, your company, your daughter. Then they'll have to say it out loud." She replied, "That's how truth works. It only hurts when you've kept it buried too long." Meanwhile, inside the Air Vista Airlines headquarters in Dallas, chaos unfolded. Conference rooms filled with executives in press suits arguing over risk assessments and public statements. The CEO, Frank DeLuca, slammed a printed report onto the table. "Are we seriously being told a software trigger built by one of our own shareholders has grounded the entire aviation grid?" His legal counsel looked pale. "It's more than that." "Sir, she's not just a shareholder. She holds FAA defense contracts. If she proves the system responded correctly, It means our staff committed a verified ethics breach under federal oversight. Frank leaned back, stunned. Meaning we're liable. A silence heavier than turbulence filled the room. Back in the air, Rebecca Sloan sat in the narrow galley under quiet observation. Her uniform looked suddenly too tight, her hair undone from nervous fingers running through it. She kept whispering, almost to herself. I didn't mean to hurt her. It just happened so fast. One of the younger attendants, eyes glossy with guilt, finally spoke. We all saw it. Rebecca. Rebecca swallowed. You think I'm a monster? The girl said softly. Just someone who thought she could get away with it. Rebecca looked toward the curtain where the agent stood talking to the captain. She's going to destroy me. The younger attendant shook her head. No, she's not destroying you. She's forcing you to see what you did. In the FAA control center, Eli's supervisor pointed to the data stream running across a digital map. Sir, the system's escalating. The protocol's entering verification stage 3. Eli nodded. It's confirming independent witness input, meaning it's pulling live statements from social media, passenger recordings, biometric data from onboard sensors, microphones, cabin cameras, even seat pressure readings. The supervisor frowned. That's invasive. That's the point, Eli said. Bias hides in silence. This system makes silence impossible. By now, cable news networks had picked up the story. Breaking banners scrolled across every screen. Nationwide ground stop FAA investigates civil rights violation aboard Air Vista flight. Commentators speculated wildly. Anchors repeated the same question. What could be so serious that the government halted all major departures in homes, airports, and offices across America? People watched footage from inside Flight AV221, blurred faces. A child sitting quietly by the window, her mother's calm composure radiating power. Some saw arrogance, others saw justice, but everyone saw something they couldn't ignore. Inside the plane, Arya stirred. Mommy, she said softly, why is everyone looking at us? Maya looked down, her expression gentle. Because they're learning something. What are they learning? That kindness isn't optional. The child nodded slowly, as if storing the thought for later. Maya turned her head toward the agents now seated across the aisle. When do we land? The lead agent replied. As soon as the ethics division clears it. Ma'am, you have authorization to deplane first. I'm not leaving until the crew is accounted for, Maya said. Every one of them. The agent hesitated, then nodded. Understood. At that moment, Eli's voice crackled through her earpiece again. Maya, we've received congressional interest. Senator Mitchell wants a briefing in the next hour. She's calling for a national ethics hearing. Maya exhaled, looking out the window at the golden lights spreading across the tarmac. It's happening faster than I expected, Eli said. You just changed aviation, Maya. In 2 minutes flat. Her voice softened. I didn't change it. Eli? Arya did. She's the reason I built this. The line went silent. Eli finally said, she's going to grow up in a better world because of you. Maya smiled faintly. No, because of her. The world just didn't realize it yet. As she ended the call, she saw Arya asleep beside her, her small hand still gripping the toy airplane. The engines remained quiet. Outside, the air traffic seemed frozen in place, like a photograph of time itself refusing to move forward until justice caught up. The cabin lights dimmed, casting a soft glow over rows of faces reflecting awe and uncertainty. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled a storm forming beyond the horizon. Maya whispered, mostly to herself. And that was just the first minute. Because deep inside the data networks of the FAA, something new had begun. A self-auditing chain of ethics analysis was compiling evidence faster than any human could follow. Every word, every gesture, every decision aboard Flight AV-221 was being archived not as punishment, but as proof. Proof that a mother's silence could be louder than any scream. Proof that the system she created didn't just monitor machines, it monitored humanity itself. By the time dawn reached Washington, the cascade would have already rewritten how the nation understood accountability. All because one woman refused to look away. The air inside Flight AV-221 had turned dense, as though the oxygen itself had absorbed the tension. The passengers whispered in low tones, some in disbelief, others trying to make sense of the unfolding chaos. They were strangers just an hour ago, but now, inside this sealed metal tube hovering between truth and denial, they were unwilling witnesses to something much larger than a delayed flight. Dr. Maya Thompson sat still, eyes half-focused on the faint reflection of herself in the window. Outside, the runway lights flickered, waiting for clearance that would never come until justice did. Arya rested her head against her mother's shoulder, fingers playing with the edges of her small toy plane. Her calmness contrasted with the visible anxiety around her. A man from 3A leaned forward slightly. Dr. Thompson. Right, I just wanted to say what that woman did was awful. My wife's black, too. We've seen this kind of thing. People pretending it's a misunderstanding. Maya turned toward him, her expression gentle but measured. Thank you, she said quietly. It's never about one incident. It's the pattern that hides behind them. He nodded, eyes down. You really built that system they're talking about? Yes, she replied. It was meant to protect lives. But I see now. Maybe it's also meant to protect dignity. Rebecca Sloan, sitting several rows behind under FIA observation, overheard the exchange. Her fingers fidgeted against her lap. She had already been questioned by Agent Lopez once, and his calm professionalism unnerved her more than anger ever could. You're not under arrest, he had said, but the system is gathering data. You'll have a chance to explain. Explain. How did one explain an instinct and unconscious snap judgment that struck faster than reason Rebecca had spent years serving passengers with perfect courtesy? But that afternoon, something had flickered in her, an impulse she hadn't questioned. That's what haunted her, now that she hadn't even thought before acting. She rubbed her wrist nervously, remembering Arya's face quiet, unreadable, not crying. That silence replayed in her mind like a loop. In the cockpit, Captain James Rourke was struggling to maintain composure. His co-pilot, a younger man named Harris, looked pale. Sir, they've locked the tarmac again. No takeoff clearance. We're grounded until further notice. I know, Rourke muttered. He turned to the radio. Tower, this is AV-21. Confirm status of ground hold. A burst of static. Then a voice confirmed. Captain, FIA ethics directive still active. Do not depart or move aircraft. Rourke leaned back, exhaling sharply. I've flown 30 years and never seen anything like this. One passenger presses a button, and the entire network freezes. Harris hesitated before speaking. Sir, they say it was her daughter. Rourke frowned. The little girl. Yet, the one who got slapped. Rourke's eyes closed briefly. God. He didn't pray often, but in that moment, he felt the weight of something moral pressing down on him. He'd witnessed the slap. He could have stepped in sooner, but like too many men his age, he'd mistaken silence for professionalism. He unlatched his harness and stood, Keep the comms open, he said. I'm going to speak with her. When the cockpit door opened, the cabin hushed again. All eyes followed him as he walked down the aisle toward Maya. He stopped at her row, clearing his throat. Dr. Thompson, he began, voice low but firm. I wanted to apologize. I should have intervened immediately. I didn't. I thought staying out of it was the professional thing to do. I was wrong. Maya studied him for a long moment. Acknowledging it is a start. Captain, the system will take care of the rest. He nodded, shame softening his face. Will we be allowed to take off soon? That depends, she said, on whether we start admitting that the air we share isn't neutral. It remembers what we do. He didn't fully understand, but her words lingered long after he returned to the cockpit. Rebecca watched the exchange from afar, feeling her stomach twist tighter. The other attendant beside her whispered, You should apologize properly. To the girl, not the mother. Rebecca shook her head. It's too late. No, the attendant said quietly. It's only too late when you stop trying. Rebecca's eyes glistened. You think she'll forgive me? I think she already decided who you are. What you do next decides if she's right. Meanwhile, Eli Carter's voice crackled softly again in Maya's earpiece. Maya, we've got confirmation the Cascade moved into public transparency mode. Every action recorded in your cabin is now secured in the Federal Ethics Ledger. That's a permanent record. Maya's gaze didn't waver. Good. It means no one can bury it. This time. You're aware, Eli added carefully, that the media already has the story news networks are running with your name. They're calling you the woman who stopped the sky. Maya exhaled. They can call me whatever they like. Just spell my daughter's name right. The sound of Arya's quiet breathing grounded her. The child had fallen asleep again, head resting in her lap. Maya's fingers brushed lightly over the small curls near her ear, a touch that held both love and fury. A mother's contradiction. Outside, on the tarmac, a growing cluster of police vehicles and media vans gathered near the terminal. Through the thick cabin windows, red and blue lights reflected like tiny stars on the plane's surface. Passengers began murmuring about the delay. One woman muttered, I have a connection to Denver. This is insane, another whispered. That kid's mom is some kind of genius. She froze the whole country. A man across the aisle, older, skeptical, said, or maybe she just likes attention. Maya heard him, but didn't react. She'd lived long enough to recognize that disbelief was often the first cousin of prejudice. Agent Lopez returned to her seat. Dr. Thompson, FAA Command will be landing a response team within the hour. They're requesting your cooperation when we deplane. Of course, she said simply. The agent hesitated. For what it's worth, ma'am. I think what you did might change a lot more than you realize. Maya smiled faintly. It already has. Rebecca's composure finally broke. She rose from her seat, walked unsteadily down the aisle, and stopped beside Arya. Maya tensed but said nothing. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. Rebecca knelt slowly, her voice trembling. Sweetheart, I don't expect you to understand what I did. I barely understand it myself, but I want to tell you I'm sorry. I was wrong, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be someone who never does that again. Arya blinked sleepily, then sat up, her small face unreadable. Okay, she said softly. You can start now. Rebecca froze. Start now. Arya nodded. By being nice to the next kid who sits here. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears she didn't wipe away. I can do that, she whispered. Good, Arya said simply, and lay her head back down. Maya's throat tightened, but she didn't speak. Some lessons didn't need a mother's voice. They were already echoing through the child. Outside, Eli watched the data stream shift. "Maya," he said through the line, "I'm seeing something new. The system's generating a secondary cascade. It's mapping past incident reports, unfiled discrimination cases across airlines, airports, even training facilities. It's pulling everything connected to Air Vista." Maya's heart skipped once. "So it's learning. It's exposing patterns. You've opened a door they can't close. Through the cabin window, sunlight was fading, replaced by streaks of orange and blue across the horizon. The stillness in the plane no longer felt like fear. It felt like reckoning." Rebecca returned quietly to her seat. The other passengers shifted, their silence softer now, less judgmental. Something had changed in the air, not because the engines were off, but because conscience was finally awake. Maya looked down at Arya, sleeping peacefully again. She whispered, "You did good, my little sky builder." When she glanced up, Captain Rourke was standing at the cockpit door once more, eyes meeting hers. He nodded a quiet signal of respect that needed no words. The cabin lights dimmed to a warm glow. The sound of sirens outside faded into background hum, and as the last rays of daylight touched the aircraft's wings, Dr. Maya Thompson understood that the world would measure time differently from this day forward, before the slap, and after the silence that followed it, because justice, once awakened, does not go back to sleep. By the time the first FAA response team arrived at the gate, the terminal outside was crowded with news cameras and restless passengers stranded by the National Ground Stop. Through the thick glass, the shape of Flight AV-221 sat like an artifact of defiance, motionless yet commanding every headline in America. Inside the cabin, the air had grown still again, heavy with the waiting. Dr. Maya Thompson sat with her back straight, her daughter asleep against her arm. Her smartwatch displayed a steady pulse of blue light, the live feed from the ethics division still recording, broadcasting evidence directly into the Federal Archive. She had designed that system to record mechanical malfunctions, not moral ones, but maybe there wasn't much difference between the two. Agent Lopez approached her quietly. "Ma'am, the response team is boarding now. They'd like to speak with you before deplaning the crew." Maya nodded. "I'll stay until my daughter wakes." The agent hesitated, studying her face, the calm certainty there. "Dr. Thompson, I think you should know the media already has your name. They're calling this the Skylock incident." She looked up, her voice steady. "They'll call it what sells, but eventually they'll have to talk about what matters." The cabin door opened, letting in a rush of cooler air and the sound of murmured commands. 2 FAA senior officers entered, followed by a corporate liaison from Air Vista, a tall man in a dark suit who looked like he'd been pulled from a boardroom mid-meeting. He was breathing hard, as if climbing into the plane had cost him more than air. "Maya," he said with forced composure. "Frank DeLuca. We've met at the shareholder summit last quarter." "I remember," she replied calmly. "You were the one who said ethics reform would slow down profit margins." His face flushed. That was a context conversation. She didn't raise her voice. "Context doesn't erase meaning, Mr. DeLuca." He cleared his throat. "Look, this is an unfortunate misunderstanding. We're deeply sorry for the incident with your daughter. I've personally suspended the crew member responsible. She's already under federal custody," Maya interrupted. "Your suspension is redundant." Frank shifted uneasily. "Right. Well, I came to assure you Air Vista will cooperate fully with the FAA. I'm sure you will, she said, her gaze unwavering. Because you don't have a choice. The officers exchanged glances, trying to stay neutral. Frank exhaled, lowering his tone. Dr. Thompson, off the record, this situation is spiraling beyond control. The markets are reacting. Airports are in chaos. I need to know what it'll take to resolve this quickly. Resolve, Maya repeated, almost tasting the word. You want me to silence the system I built to trade dignity for convenience? Not silence, he said quickly. Just pause the cascade. You can make a statement later. A press release. Amaya turned to look at her sleeping daughter. My daughter was assaulted on your plane. Mr. DeLuca, you want me to pause justice so your investors can breathe easier? Frank rubbed his forehead. This isn't personal. It's corporate survival. Maya's eyes met his with the quiet force of steel. To me, those are the same thing. My company builds machines that carry human lives. If we forget the human part, then all we have left are falling machines. One of the FAA officers stepped forward. Dr. Thompson, if I may, what exactly did you trigger? None of us have clearance to see inside Ethra's system. She adjusted the cuff of her sleeve. The Ethra protocol monitors behavioral data in real time across registered commercial flights. It detects potential ethical violations, racial bias, assault, misconduct before they're buried. Once activated, it cross-links live communications with FAA oversight. Every interaction becomes evidence. It can't be altered, only reviewed. The officer nodded slowly, impressed. And you designed it yourself. With Eli Carter, she said. We believe machines should not only measure turbulence, but humanity. Frank scoffed under his breath. You built a system that judges people by algorithms. That's not justice, it's surveillance. Maya's response was quiet, but firm. It's accountability, Mr. DeLuca. The kind people like you only call surveillance when it finally looks back. The silence after that was heavier than anger. One of the passengers clapped once tentatively. Another joined. Within seconds, the sound rippled through the cabin, small but certain. Frank flushed again, his jaw tightening. This isn't a courtroom. Dr. Thompson. She looked around at the faces watching him, then back at him. You're wrong. It is. And the whole country's the jury. As Frank turned to leave, the captain stepped forward from the cockpit. Sir, before you go, there's something you should see. He handed him a tablet showing the flight logs, time-stamped from the moment of takeoff clearance denial. Every action Rebecca Sloan had taken was recorded. Voice recognition, cabin audio, body cam feed from a safety lens above the galley. It was all there. The slap, the silence, the aftermath. Frank's eyes widened. This is admissible evidence. Under the FAA Ethics Act. Yes. The officer replied. The system auto-filed it within 30 seconds of activation. Frank looked at Maya again. Speechless now. She simply said, that's what happens when a system is designed to remember what people try to forget. Outside, the media lights flickered brighter as the story gained momentum. News anchors were calling it the most significant aviation ethics event since 9/11, a moral emergency rather than a mechanical one. The nation was glued to screens, watching a plane that refused to move. Maya felt Arya stir awake beside her. Are we home yet? Mommy almost, Maya whispered. Just a little longer. Arya blinked sleep from her eyes, then looked around at the faces still watching her with awe and guilt and something new respect. They're still here, Yes, her mother said softly. They're learning patience. Agent Lopez received an update through his earpiece. Ma'am, FAA Command has ordered us to escort you and your daughter to headquarters for immediate testimony. Senator Mitchell herself is requesting your statement. Maya gathered her bag carefully, slipped Arya's drawing pad inside, and stood. We'll come, but I want the recording preserved exactly as it is. No edits, no redactions. It's already sealed in federal custody, Lopez assured. As they walked toward the exit, the passengers instinctively made way for them. The aisle became a corridor of quiet acknowledgement. Someone whispered, "That's her." Another murmured, "The woman who stopped the sky." When they reached the door, Rebecca Sloan stepped forward, trembling, eyes red from crying. "Dr. Thompson," she said, voice cracking, "I want you to know I'm cooperating fully. I'm not running from what I did." Maya looked at her, not with scorn but with a measured calm. "Good. Don't run from the lesson either." Rebecca nodded, tears falling. "I won't." Outside. The night air was cool against Maya's skin. Dozens of camera flashes erupted, painting the tarmac in bursts of light. Arya clung to her mother's hand as reporters shouted questions, voices blending into chaos. "Dr. Thompson, did you know your system could shut down the country? Is this the end of Air Vista Airlines? Are you planning legal action? What message do you have for the public?" Maya paused on the steps, her silhouette framed by the glow of floodlights. She didn't raise her voice, but somehow every microphone caught her words. "My message," she said, "is simple. You can ground planes, delay flights, lose profits, but if you lose your humanity, the sky itself becomes meaningless." The reporters fell silent. Even the distant rumble of engines seemed to fade. Then, holding her daughter close, she descended the stairs, each step deliberate, each movement echoing through cameras and hearts alike. Frank DeLuca watched from a distance, his phone buzzing with board members demanding damage control. For the first time, he didn't answer. He looked at Maya, her posture unshaken, her child at her side, and realized something irreversible had begun. He turned to the officer next to him. "She's not just a CEO," he said quietly. "She's a storm." The officer nodded. "A storm we needed. Inside the control tower." Eli Carter watched the live feed end. The map on his screen glowed with grounded flights, frozen in formation like stars waiting for permission to rise again. He leaned back, whispering to himself, "She did it. She really changed the sky." And miles away, as the city lights of Atlanta shimmered beneath the night, the woman they should have respected walked through the cameras, through the noise, through the history she had just rewritten. One act of courage, one refusal to be silent, one child's unshakable dignity leading the way. The black SUV slid silently across the wet streets of Washington, D.C., its headlights cutting through the mist like steady blades. Inside, Dr. Maya Thompson sat with her daughter asleep in her arms. Arya's head rested against her chest. The soft rhythm of her breathing, the only sound that reminded Maya the world was still moving. Outside, the city's skyline loomed monuments and marble standing like sentinels of a justice that too often came late. Agent Lopez sat across from her, reviewing a tablet filled with encrypted data. The ride was quiet until he finally spoke. "Dr. Thompson, I've been ordered to deliver you directly to the FAA Command Center. Senator Mitchell will meet us there. The entire country's waiting for a statement." Maya's gaze remained fixed on the blurred city lights. Let them wait. Truth doesn't rush. The agent gave a small nod, half in respect, half in awe. He'd seen powerful people before, but there was something about her silence, an authority that didn't need volume. When they arrived, the building was already swarming with journalists, flashing cameras, and security lines. A narrow corridor led to a glass-walled command room filled with rows of screens, each glowing with maps of airports still on lockdown. At the center stood Senator Clara Mitchell, poised and composed, her silver hair reflecting the cool light. "Maya," she greeted, extending her hand. "You certainly know how to get the nation's attention." "I didn't plan to," Maya replied, shaking it firmly. "But sometimes attention is the only way to get accountability." Clara studied her for a moment. "You've forced an industry to face itself. That's not small. You're aware this cascade could rewrite aviation law." "That's why I built it," Maya said simply. The senator gestured to a nearby console. "The data from the ETHRA protocol is flooding in. Over 17,000 flagged incidents from the past 2 years, cases of profiling, harassment, unexplained seating downgrades, every one of them hidden under policy discrepancies." Maya took a breath. "And now they're no longer hidden." Clara looked impressed, but also wary. "This much exposure will cause chaos. Airlines will demand suppression orders. Unions will panic. You're about to make powerful enemies." Maya's tone didn't waver. "Then I know I'm doing something right." Behind them, Eli Carter entered, still wearing his ID lanyard and exhaustion on his face. His eyes met Maya's, and for the first time since this began, he allowed himself to smile. "You never warned me it would look like a digital revolution." She allowed a faint smirk. "Would you have joined if I had?" He shrugged, probably faster. Clara turned toward them both. "We've set up a live broadcast. The president has been briefed. You'll have 3 minutes before the networks cut to commentary. Make them count." Maya hesitated, glancing at her sleeping daughter through the glass of the adjacent waiting room. Arya was curled up on a sofa, wrapped in a government-issued blanket far too big for her tiny frame. "I didn't want her to grow up watching her mother fight," Maya said softly. "But maybe this is what protection looks like," Eli replied gently. "Sometimes the fight is the shelter." Maya nodded once. "Let's begin." The senator led her to the podium. The lights dimmed slightly, cameras blinked awake, and every major network went live. Across the nation, living rooms, offices, and airport terminals glowed with her image. "Good evening," Maya began. Her voice was steady, clear, unhurried. 2 hours ago, my daughter was assaulted on a plane for sitting in a seat someone decided she didn't deserve. In response, a system I built to prevent such acts of bias was triggered automatically. That system, the ETHRA protocol, has now exposed thousands of similar incidents across the aviation industry. She paused, letting the words settle. This isn't just about one child or one airline. It's about what happens when we treat dignity as optional, when silence is mistaken for civility, when companies believe profit absolves them of humanity. Cameras clicked, the sound like rain against glass. Maya's gaze never faltered. "I'm not here to destroy the aviation industry," she continued. "I'm here to rebuild its conscience. We can engineer planes that defy gravity, but not the prejudice that keeps us grounded. That must change." She exhaled quietly. "My daughter asked me today why everyone had to stop flying. I told her it was so the world could finally learn how to look where it was going." Her final words landed like slow thunder. The sky is not free until everyone can rise in it. The room fell silent for several seconds. Then Senator Mitchell leaned forward, her voice calm but resolute. "Dr. Thompson, we'll begin hearings tomorrow. Public, transparent. You'll have full access to the ethics ledger. This is bigger than any of us now." Maya gave a small nod, her expression unreadable. "It was always bigger. We just never looked up long enough to notice." As the cameras powered down, Eli approached her, his voice barely above a whisper. "You realize what you just did? The cascade isn't stopping. It's learning. It's pulling live ethics data from every airline in North America." Maya turned to the wall of monitors. Across them, airports glowed in connected red circles, blinking like the pulse of a living organism. Then let it learn. The world's had centuries to teach it. Outside the command room, Arya stirred awake and padded toward the door, clutching her toy plane. She peeked through the glass, spotting her mother among the crowd of officials. She smiled sleepily, pressing her small hand against the window. Maya caught the motion and smiled back, a quiet exchange of strength. At that same moment, Frank DeLuca was pacing inside Air Vista's Emergency Operations Center, a phone pressed to his ear. "Yes." "I saw the broadcast," he snapped. "No, I can't spin it. She's the face of integrity now. If we fight her, we look like monsters." His PR director murmured something, but Frank cut her off. "I don't need statements. I need solutions. Find out what legislation she's backing before it hits the floor. We'll lose billions if she pushes through federal ethics oversight." He ended the call and leaned back, staring at the news feed showing Maya's face frozen mid-speech. For the first time in his career, he felt something heavier than anger. It was respect and fear tangled together. Meanwhile, in homes across America, people argued, cried, reflected. A black mother in Chicago held her son a little tighter. A white flight attendant watched the broadcast with tears she couldn't explain. A pilot in Denver turned off his phone and sat in silence. The cascade wasn't just digital anymore. It was emotional, spreading through the hearts of those who had chosen silence for too long. By midnight, new legislation drafts were circulating through congressional servers. The Passenger Dignity and Equity Act, proposed by Senator Mitchell and backed by Dr. Maya Thompson, called for mandatory bias reporting systems in all U.S. airlines within 12 months. Violations would trigger automatic federal audits and funding freezes. Eli watched the first draft appear on his monitor and whispered, "It's starting." Maya, standing beside him, folded her arms. "No," she said softly. "It's continuing." Through the window, the city lights shimmered under drizzle. Arya, now fully awake, tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, when can we fly again?" Maya knelt beside her. "Soon, baby. But next time, everyone will fly safer because of you." Arya looked thoughtful. Even the mean Lady Maya smiled gently. Especially her. They stepped out into the cool night air. Reporters were still waiting, flashbulbs ready. But Maya didn't stop. She walked past them, her hand wrapped around her daughter's. The cameras followed their silhouettes disappearing into the soft glow of dawn. Behind them, the monitor still flickered in the command center. Lines of code scrolled endlessly as the cascade analyzed, learned, adapted. For the first time, a machine understood something profound, that ethics wasn't about punishment. It was about proof that humanity could evolve. And somewhere above the grounded plains, the sky began to lighten. Morning light poured through the tall glass windows of the Senate chamber, reflecting off polished wood and steel microphones arranged in precise symmetry. The hearing had drawn the largest media turnout in over a decade. Rows of cameras lined the walls. Journalists scribbled notes as the public filed in, murmuring under the weight of history being written in real time. At the center table sat Dr. Maya Thompson, calm, composed, her presence both commanding and grounded. Beside her sat Eli Carter, nervously shuffling through digital reports on his tablet, and Senator Clara Mitchell, dignified and sharp, ready to preside over what the press was already calling the hearing of truth. A few seats behind them, Agent Lopez stood silently, ensuring order, while little Aria waited in a private lounge next door under the care of a family liaison. She'd asked her mother that morning, "Are they going to say sorry?" And Maya had answered softly, "Some of them will. Others will need time to understand what sorry really means." The gavel struck once, and the murmurs ceased. Senator Mitchell's voice carried across the room. "This hearing convenes under the authority of the Senate Committee on Transportation and Ethics to review the activation of the ETHRA protocol and the resulting nationwide cascade." Across the aisle, Frank DeLuca, CEO of Air Vista Airlines, sat with his attorneys, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. He looked smaller than he had in his boardroom, stripped of the power that came from money and distance. Today, distance didn't exist. The nation was watching. Senator Mitchell continued, "Dr. Thompson, for the record, please describe in your own words the purpose of the system you created." Maya leaned slightly forward. The ETHRA protocol was designed to ensure that accountability could no longer be delayed by bureaucracy. It listens, learns, and responds to ethical violations in real time. It was built to prevent tragedy before it becomes headline. "And you claim," the senator asked, "that its activation was not intentional." "It wasn't," Maya replied. "It was instinct. The same instinct every mother has when protecting her child. The difference is, this time the instinct had code." The audience shifted. A few senators exchanged glances, impressed by her clarity. Frank DeLuca leaned into his microphone. His tone practiced, "Madam Chair, while we regret the incident involving Dr. Thompson's daughter, this system caused mass disruption across our entire industry. Thousands of passengers stranded, millions lost. Our economy cannot function on emotional algorithms." Maya turned to him slowly. "Emotional algorithms," she echoed. "You think empathy is emotion? It's engineering. Mr. DeLuca, it's the one variable your models never include." Laughter rippled through the audience before the gavel restored order. Frank's attorney intervened. "Dr. Thompson, are you aware your system breached corporate privacy laws? It accessed communications beyond its scope." Eli leaned toward the mic. "With respect, Counselor, those systems are integrated under FAA partnership clauses. Every airline signed compliance agreements, Air Vista included." Frank frowned. "We signed under assumption of standard testing, not live deployment." Maya's expression remained calm. "And yet, when the truth went live, your company's first instinct was damage control, not apology." Senator Mitchell leaned forward. "Dr. Thompson, do you believe the system's autonomy went too far?" "No," Maya said without hesitation. "For once, technology wasn't protecting power. It was protecting people." Silence fell again. Even the clicking of cameras paused. Across the chamber, a digital screen projected evidence logs. Video clips appeared, footage from Flight AV-221. The slap, the child's startled silence, the ripple of shock through passengers, the recording of Rebecca Sloan's voice trembling. It was just a misunderstanding. The footage stopped, and the room held its breath. Senator Mitchell spoke softly. "This recording has been verified as authentic by the FAA Ethics Division. The nation deserves to understand how such incidents become systemic." Maya clasped her hands. "What you just saw isn't an anomaly. It's a symptom. For years, we've built industries that fly higher, faster, cheaper, but forgot to build them kinder. The Ethra protocol didn't break the system. Senator, it revealed it. Even those who came ready to challenge her found no footing in that truth. At the far end of the table, a young senator leaned into his microphone. Dr. Thompson, some are calling you a hero. Others say you created a weapon of policy. How do you see yourself? She considered the question carefully. Neither, she said. I see myself as a witness. The world doesn't need more heroes. It needs better witnesses. The statement hung in the air, heavy and resonant. Eli watched her, realizing again that she wasn't just defending her invention, she was redefining what leadership meant. Not domination, but illumination. Outside, millions watched the hearing live, in homes, in airports, in classrooms. Hashtags multiplied. The hearing of truth. The sky belongs to everyone. Ethra Act Now. Across social media, clips of Maya's calm defiance spread like wildfire. Back in the chamber, Senator Mitchell called for a brief recess. As microphones muted and chatter returned, Maya turned to Eli. How's the data holding stable? He said. The cascade's still active but controlled. It's even identifying policy anomalies in other industries, education, healthcare, law enforcement. Maya frowned. That wasn't its design. Eli smiled slightly. Maybe it's growing, learning faster than we thought. She looked thoughtful. Then let's make sure it learns the right lessons. When the hearing resumed, Senator Mitchell addressed the room again. After review of the evidence and testimony, this committee proposes the immediate drafting of the Passenger Dignity and Equity Act. Dr. Thompson will serve as Senior Ethics Advisor. Mr. DeLuca, your airline will cooperate fully in restitution and compliance under federal oversight. Frank's jaw tightened. You're making her the face of regulation. No, Mitchell said evenly. She's the conscience of it. Applause broke out from the public gallery, soft at first, then swelling like the start of a new anthem. Frank sat back, defeated, eyes hollow. But deep down, he knew this was inevitable. He had built an empire on polished surfaces. Maya had built a mirror, and mirrors, once held up, never lie. As the session adjourned, Maya gathered her papers. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes lit her face, but she paused only when Senator Mitchell touched her arm. You did it, Claire whispered. Maya's voice was calm. No, the truth did. It just needed somewhere to land. Outside the chamber, Arya was waiting in the hallway, holding her toy plane. When she saw her mother, she ran to her, eyes bright. Mommy, did they listen? Maya knelt, smiling. Yes, baby. This time, they did. Arya tilted her head. So now we can fly again. Soon, Maya said softly. But when we do, the sky will be different. Eli joined them, exhaustion and pride written all over his face. Dr. Thompson, he said quietly, the president just endorsed your initiative. The act's going to the floor next week. It's official you've changed aviation. Maya looked down at Arya's small hands holding the toy. No, she said, her voice warm. She did. I just built what she inspired. As they stepped outside, the sun broke through the morning clouds, scattering light across the Capitol steps. Reporters swarmed, microphones rising like a sea of reaching hands. But for once, Maya didn't feel the weight of their gaze. She felt lighter, like gravity had shifted. Arya pointed upward at a plane gliding silently overhead. Look, Mommy, it's flying again. Maya watched it for a long time before replying. Yes, baby, she said, voice full of quiet triumph. And so are we. The morning of the first nationwide implementation of the Passenger Dignity and Equity Act arrived with a crisp clarity that felt almost ceremonial. The sky over Washington, D.C., was a sweeping canvas of pale blue and golden light, as if the world itself was taking a deep, approving breath. Dr. Maya Thompson stood at the observation deck of Ethra Aerospace's headquarters. Arya perched on a stool beside her, swinging her legs lazily. "Mommy," Arya said softly, pointing to a distant plane ascending, its contrails dissolving into the horizon. "Do you think it knows it's different now?" Maya's lips curved into a gentle smile. "Yes, baby, it knows, and everyone flying it will remember too." Inside the operations room, Eli Carter monitored hundreds of live feeds from domestic and international airports. Lines of green, yellow, and red flickered across his screens, each color corresponding to real-time ethics compliance and passenger dignity metrics. What had once been a concept was now a tangible network of accountability. Maya leaned closer. "How many airlines are fully compliant today?" 78% of major U.S. carriers, Eli said, his voice steady, though his eyes betrayed the thrill of witnessing history. 2 smaller carriers are still implementing the systems, but they've committed to full integration within 30 days, and the cascade has already started showing patterns of improvement in crew behavior. She nodded thoughtfully. "Good. But we must be careful. Metrics don't teach compassion. They measure it." Arya hummed quietly, her small fingers tracing a plane drawn in the corner of a notebook she'd been given during the congressional hearing. "Mommy," she asked, eyes wide and innocent, "did they understand why I pressed the button?" "They're starting to," Maya said, "but some people take longer to learn than others. What matters is that we never stop pressing for it." The city outside buzzed with activity, a reflection of the world preparing to adjust to a new moral compass. In the halls of the Department of Transportation, Senator Clara Mitchell convened an emergency briefing with senior FAA officials and airline executives. Her silver hair reflected the glow of the monitors, but her voice carried the calm authority of someone accustomed to turning abstract principles into actionable law. "We are implementing the Zahara-style ethics reporting and the Ethra protocol nationwide," she said firmly. "Airline CEOs, you now have a choice: comply fully or face immediate federal scrutiny, including suspension of gate access and revocation of federal contracts." Frank DeLuca, Air Vista's CEO, sat at the far end of the table, his tie loosened and jaw tight. His legal counsel whispered, "We can appeal, but the public attention makes that risky." Frank clenched his hands. "I know, but this is more than risk. This is reputation annihilation." The room remained tense as the presentation shifted to a live feed from Flight AV-221, now empty, except for maintenance crews. The cabin's new layout and transparent monitoring systems were displayed, showing integrated alert systems and ethics compliance devices on every seatback. Every crew member had undergone ethics recertification. Maya watched quietly from her side of the city. Arya perched on her hip. "Look," she whispered, pointing to the screen. "The difference is in intention." Meanwhile, across the nation, families prepared to board flights under the new law. Parents held their children a little tighter, knowing a system watched over them now. Airline staff, trained anew, walked the aisles with conscious awareness. No one ignored small injustices anymore. Every gesture, every word, every glance had accountability woven into it. In a small town in Georgia, a black mother named Danielle sat with her son, Jamal, watching the live broadcast of the first certified compliant flight. "This is the first time I felt safe booking first class for him," she whispered. Jamal's eyes were wide. "Does that mean I can sit anywhere?" Yes, Danielle said softly, and no one can tell you otherwise. Back in Washington, Maya and Eli moved toward a private briefing with Agent Lopez and FAA oversight officers. The screens now displayed a map of 42 airports still showing restricted access due to past violations. The frozen icons were now slowly turning green, symbolizing full compliance. The ripple of ethical accountability stretched further than even Maya had anticipated. Eli tilted his head. The cascade is expanding faster than predicted. Airlines are voluntarily reporting data even before activation. The public visibility is forcing proactive change. Maya nodded. Good, but remember, a system alone isn't enough. The culture has to shift too. Otherwise, these metrics are just numbers. At Logan International Airport in Boston, reporters were lined up to capture the first children traveling under the ETHRA protocol safeguards. Aria, for her part, had been invited to walk a ceremonial path with other child ambassadors who had inspired policy changes. She carried her small silver pin, a gift from her mother symbolizing accountability, and walked confidently beside Dr. Thompson. A group of airline executives, including Frank DeLuca, stood watching. Frank's face was pale. He whispered to his PR chief, "She doesn't just enforce ethics, she makes people feel it." Meanwhile, across the country, social media buzzed. Videos of children like Arya sitting confidently in first class while flight attendants followed new protocols went viral. Hashtags multiplied. My sky belongs to all. Lao, passenger dignity. ETHRA protocol. Parents shared stories. Passengers commented. And airline unions began internal discussions about ethical reform strategies. In a small apartment in Seattle, a flight attendant named Naomi rewatched a clip of Arya pressing the activation button. Tears filled her eyes. "I was scared to report before," she whispered, "but now, someone is listening. Someone sees the truth." At the FOA command center, Maya's phone buzzed continuously. She ignored calls, focusing instead on the main display. Lines of light pulsed across the network map, showing the systems now actively auditing behavior and compliance. The morning sunlight caught the edges of the monitors, casting a glow that made the map appear almost alive. Eli leaned over. "Dr. Thompson, you're seeing an unintended effect the cascade is cross-referencing schools, transit systems, even healthcare compliance data. It's like it's learning where ethics need reinforcement beyond aviation." Maya's gaze softened. Then maybe it wasn't unintended. Maybe this is how change grows from a single act, a single refusal to accept silence. She reached for Arya's hand. "Do you remember the day you pressed that button?" she asked softly. Arya nodded. "Yes, Mommy. I didn't yell. I just waited. And people listened." Maya smiled faintly. "Exactly. And that's how the world will remember today. Not because of noise, not because of outrage, but because someone refused to be erased." At Air Vista's headquarters, Frank DeLuca convened an emergency board meeting. Stock charts flashed in red. Conference calls buzzed. Lawyers argued over liability. Yet even amid panic, Frank couldn't stop replaying the Senate hearing. Maya's calm voice echoing. Something had changed. Irreversibly, the human conscience was now encoded into every flight. Maya, meanwhile, walked with Arya toward a helicopter pad atop ETHRA Aerospace. Journalists tried to snap photos, but the mother and daughter moved steadily, leaving the chaos behind. As the rotor blades began to spin, Maya whispered, "The sky remembers now. Arya, it remembers courage, dignity, and honesty, and it will act accordingly." Arya looked down at the city below. Tiny cars gliding over streets, planes climbing higher in the distance. "I think they'll all listen now," she said, small but confident. Yes, Maya said, holding her daughter close, because someone finally gave them no choice but to. The helicopter lifted off smoothly, carrying them above the skyline. For the first time in her life, Maya felt the sky wasn't just a highway or a business road. It was a living, responsive entity, a canvas that had learned to value human decency. And as the city shrank beneath them, the cascading network of ethics, compliance, vigilance, and accountability pulsed across the nation, quietly reshaping aviation culture forever. By mid-morning, the effects of the ETHRA protocol cascade were no longer contained to airports or boardrooms. Across the United States, city streets and suburban homes buzzed with conversations that had been dormant for decades. Families discussed the ethics of airlines over breakfast tables. Offices integrated new employee conduct metrics inspired by the aviation reforms. And schools taught children about their rights as passengers of life, and citizens of conscience. In Atlanta, Danielle and her son Jamal watched a live feed of an ETHRA-certified flight taking off. The boy's eyes were wide with wonder. "Mom, does this mean everyone will behave now?" he asked earnestly. Danielle smiled but shook her head. "Not everyone, baby. But people will think twice before being cruel. And that's the start." Meanwhile, at the FAA Command Center in Washington, D.C., Dr. Maya Thompson and Eli Carter monitored the cascade as it continued to analyze data in real time. Airports previously flagged for violations were transitioning to green compliance, their operational dashboards displaying the metrics that now define not just safety, but human dignity. "Look at Denver," Eli said, pointing at the screen. "All crew compliance logs are live. The system has already flagged microaggressions that were never reported before." Maya's gaze was steady. "It's working, but we can't rely on technology alone. Culture has to internalize these principles. Metrics without moral understanding are hollow." Agent Lopez walked over. Tablet in hand, "Dr. Thompson, several airlines are voluntarily submitting reports ahead of compliance deadlines. Even some previously resistant carriers are requesting training modules based on the ETHRA protocol. The public pressure is immense." Maya exhaled, a mix of relief and fatigue threading through her tone. That's the power of visibility. Silence is easy to exploit, but transparency is unstoppable. Across the Pacific, airports in Tokyo and Sydney began preliminary trials with the ethics monitoring system, inspired by live coverage of the U.S. implementation. Engineers and safety officers huddled around consoles, watching real-time compliance scoring and validation of crew behavior during boarding and in-flight service. Conversations over the integration of ethics and operations took on a new urgency, echoing the ripple created by a 6-year-old child's quiet act of courage. In Washington, Maya and Arya walked down the hallway of the Department of Transportation, the child's hand small and firm in her mother's. Media crews outside were kept at a distance, but the cameras inside the corridors displayed the excitement building throughout the country. Arya tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, how does everyone have a button like mine now?" Maya chuckled softly. "Not exactly, baby. But everyone has something just as important: people who are watching. And now, the watching is systemic. No one can turn a blind eye without consequence." Back at Air Vista Airlines, Frank DeLuca convened another emergency meeting. His executives looked more defeated than ever, their screens flooded with real-time compliance scores, negative press reports, and social media metrics showing widespread support for the ETHRA protocol. Frank clenched his jaw. "We underestimated her," he admitted quietly to his legal counsel. "This isn't about a PR fix anymore. It's cultural accountability baked into every flight. Meanwhile, Dr. Thompson was receiving messages from parents, flight attendants, and former airline employees who had felt silenced for years. Some recounted discriminatory treatment. Others described unsafe conditions that had been ignored. Each note reinforced the necessity of the system, each story a testament to what had been hidden. Arya leaned against her mother as they entered a secure briefing room. "Mommy, do people really understand now?" Maya nodded. "They're learning, baby, slowly, but they are." Eli joined them, eyes wide with excitement. "Dr. Thompson, look at New York. JFK is reporting 0 violations in real time for the first time in a decade. Even previously flagged crew members are performing exemplary ethical checks." Maya smiled faintly. "We're not done, Eli. But it's progress. In classrooms across the country, children watched educational segments about passenger dignity. Teachers guided discussions about Arya's example, explaining how ethical courage can ripple into institutional change. Young students practiced role-playing exercises, learning how to speak up safely, report misconduct, and trust in systems that protect their dignity. In a small town in Montana, Naomi, a flight attendant, watched a clip of Arya's moment on Flight AV221 for the second time that morning. Her eyes shimmered with tears. "I was scared to report before," she whispered, recalling months of witnessing subtle discrimination and misconduct. "But now, no one can ignore it. We are all accountable." As the morning progressed, a nationwide data dashboard tracked the activation of the ETHRA protocol in 42 previously non-compliant airports. Compliance rates skyrocketed. Airlines were submitting voluntary audits. Passengers were filing reports with newfound confidence, and the first federal review panels convened to evaluate the effectiveness of these systemic changes. Senator Mitchell addressed the media from the steps of the DOT headquarters. "Today is not just about a new law. It's about the values we embed into every flight, every interaction, and every institution." And Dr. Maya Thompson and her daughter have reminded us that courage can be small, silent, and human, but its impact can be monumental. Maya, observing from a distance, held Arya's hand tightly. She felt the weight of the responsibility that had been entrusted to her. Yet there was serenity in knowing that the system she had built was alive, vigilant, and principled. Eli tapped a notification on his tablet. "Dr. Thompson, Boston Logan reports all first-class compliance metrics green. Passengers and crew alike are following protocol without incident. Even minor deviations are immediately addressed by automated alerts." Maya allowed herself a deep breath. "Good. That's what it's supposed to do. The system doesn't punish it, reminds, corrects, and guides behavior in real time." News of the nationwide cascade spread rapidly. Families, advocacy groups, and educators began citing the Thompson Protocol as a model for ethical oversight in other industries. Hospitals, transit systems, and educational institutions explored analogous monitoring systems to safeguard human dignity in their domains. The conversation expanded beyond aviation ethics had a new standard, enforced with clarity and consistency. Arya tilted her head at her mother. "Mommy, do you think people will ever forget what we did?" Maya knelt down to meet her daughter's eyes. "Maybe some will try, but actions have a memory of their own. The sky remembers now, and it will remind us if we ever stray." By late afternoon, media outlets were flooded with stories highlighting the ripple effects of a single act of courage. Passenger stories, crew testimonials, and expert commentaries proliferated across television, print, and social media. Every account echoed a central truth: accountability and dignity could no longer be optional in aviation. Even Frank DeLuca, watching live coverage from his executive office, recognized the inevitability of change. He closed his laptop slowly, the reality settling in. "This isn't punishment," he murmured to his CFO. "It's history, and we're all going to have to follow it." Meanwhile, Dr. Thompson walked onto a rooftop balcony overlooking the city with Arya, holding her daughter close. The child gazed up at the plane streaking across the horizon. "Mommy," she said quietly. "Did I really change everything?" Maya kissed her hair. "No, baby. You reminded us to see what was always there. And once we saw it, the world had no choice but to act." The wind caught Arya's silver pin, letting it gleam in the sunlight as the city below hummed with the pulse of accountability, from the smallest acts to nationwide legislation. The echoes of that single moment aboard Flight AV-201 reverberated farther than anyone could have anticipated. And somewhere high above, the sky seemed to shimmer with memory, recording every act of courage, every refusal to accept injustice, and every measure of dignity restored. Dawn broke slowly over the tarmac of Philadelphia International Airport, the pale lights spilling over grounded planes, taxiways glistening from an early spring rain. The air smelled faintly of jet fuel and wet concrete, ordinary and yet alive with possibility. Dr. Maya Thompson stood beside her daughter, Arya, at the observation deck overlooking the gates. The hum of engines and the chatter of passengers blended into a rhythm that felt like the heartbeat of a city just waking. Mommy," Arya whispered, pointing at a plane taxiing toward the runway. "Do you think it knows? It has to be nice now." Maya smiled softly, brushing back a curl from Arya's face. "It will remember, baby. Every flight now has to follow rules that people can see and trust. The sky listens because we made it listen." Inside the control tower, Eli Carter monitored the real-time data streams from the Ethra protocol. Screens glowed with green compliance indicators, ethics alerts, and live passenger feedback scores. Lines of code scrolled like a river of light, each one a signal of someone's behavior being corrected before it became harmful. "It's fascinating," Eli murmured to himself. "The cascade isn't just holding airlines accountable, it's teaching them how to behave." Agent Lopez entered quietly. Tablet in hand, "Dr. Thompson, we're receiving reports from 15 more regional carriers adopting the protocol voluntarily. Compliance is reaching 91% nationwide, within hours of implementation." Maya nodded, her expression calm but thoughtful. "Good. But culture change takes longer than tech adoption. Metrics enforce rules, but understanding enforces ethics. The real work begins when people internalize the values themselves." Meanwhile, Senator Clara Mitchell held a conference call with international aviation officials. Delegates from Tokyo, Paris, and Johannesburg listened as she detailed the Ethra protocol and its success in the United States. "It's not just about safety metrics anymore," she explained. "We're embedding accountability, transparency, and dignity into the very fabric of aviation. Across the country, families prepared for flights, feeling a new sense of confidence. Parents whispered to their children about Arya's example, about how one small act, pressing a simple button, could initiate systemic change. In offices and schools, the ripple was visible. Children were learning to speak up, employees to report misconduct without fear, and executives to recognize that profit could no longer outweigh basic human decency. At Logan International in Boston, Naomi, the flight attendant inspired by Arya's courage, walked the aisle of a fully compliant flight, her steps measured and purposeful. She greeted every passenger with care, checked that families were seated comfortably, and noted any minor issues in real time using her Ethra integrated tablet. Each action, small though it seemed, reinforced the lessons learned from the incident with Arya. Back in Philadelphia, Maya and Arya boarded a demonstration flight designed to showcase the full capabilities of the Ethra protocol. The cabin was quiet, pristine, and equipped with visible compliance indicators at every seat. Maya explained the system to the flight crew with clarity, her voice soft yet authoritative. Every action, every interaction, is recorded and verified. The goal is not punishment, it is prevention. To ensure dignity is never negotiable. Arya peeked over her mother's shoulder, fascinated by the display panels and the quiet precision of the cabin. "Mommy, does it really see everything?" "Yes, baby," Maya replied, "and it remembers, just like you did when you pressed the button." The flight took off smoothly, engines humming with a serene power that contrasted sharply with the chaos the same industry had once harbored. As they ascended above the clouds, screens displayed metrics and compliance feedback in real time. Each cabin crew action, from offering assistance to seating adjustments, triggered immediate acknowledgement. Any deviation was flagged and corrected by system prompts, ensuring passengers' comfort and safety while enforcing ethical standards. On board, passengers whispered in amazement. One father held his daughter's hand and said quietly, "It's like the plane itself knows we matter." A young professional typed on his laptop, marveling at the live data feed showing not only operational efficiency, but also passenger dignity scores. Meanwhile, back in the FAA Command Center, Eli Carter and Agent Lopez watched the flight's metrics update live. "Look at that," Eli said, pointing at a feed showing dozens of micro-corrections taking place in real time. Every gesture, every response, every action aligns with protocol standards. The cascade is self-reinforcing. Maya observed the screen silently, pride softening her features. "It's not about control," she said. "It's about creating an environment where doing the right thing is the easiest, most natural choice." Across the nation, the media began broadcasting footage from this flight, highlighting the tangible changes in crew behavior and passenger experience. Social media erupted. Hashtags multiplied. Urja Sky That Listens. Dignity in Flight. Ethra Protocol Global. Families posted images. Flight attendants shared testimonials. And executives discussed how their corporate cultures needed recalibration. Frank DeLuca, watching from Air Vista headquarters, was quieter than usual. His office, once a hub of confident authority, now felt like a museum of lessons learned too late. He muttered to himself, "She didn't just expose us, she changed the standard we're measured by." At the same time, across classrooms and civic forums, Arya's quiet courage became a teaching tool. Children learned that ethical courage could be small yet transformative, that reporting injustice didn't require yelling, but thoughtful action. Civic groups cited her example in town halls. Community leaders adopted real-time accountability measures inspired by the protocol. As the demonstration flight cruised above the East Coast, Arya leaned against her mother's arm, her eyes tracing the cloud line below. "Mommy, will everyone have a button now?" Maya kissed her hair gently. "No, baby. But now everyone has a system that watches for them, just like the button watched for you. Courage is still personal, but the system ensures it has allies." The flight began its descent over Logan Airport, passengers calm and reassured, crew attentive yet unintrusive. Metrics showed compliance rates at 100%, and the real-time ethics display registered 0 incidents flagged for intervention. The system wasn't just functioning, it was teaching, correcting, and evolving in a way that made the industry fundamentally safer and more humane. As the plane touched down, Arya clapped softly, her small face glowing with pride. Passengers and crew shared quiet smiles, a mutual acknowledgment of the shift that had occurred. Maya held her daughter's hand, feeling the weight of everything they had set in motion. Eli leaned forward over the console at the FAA command center. "Dr. Thompson, this is only the beginning. The data is showing early cross-industry application. Airlines, transit systems, even hospitals are considering integrating similar oversight mechanisms." Maya's voice was low but steady. "Then it's not just aviation. It's a blueprint for accountability everywhere. If dignity can be codified here, it can be replicated wherever people are at risk of being ignored." Arya tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, can we do it again?" Maya smiled, eyes fixed on the horizon. "We'll always fly again, baby. But this time, the sky will never forget." Outside, the morning sun caught the tails of departing planes, glinting like silver promises. Across the nation, passengers, employees, and executives absorbed the subtle yet profound lesson: silence was no longer acceptable. Integrity had found a system that amplified it. Humanity had been encoded into every flight path, every cabin aisle, every boarding gate, and somewhere above it all, as if the clouds themselves were keeping record, the sky seemed to shimmer with memory. Every ethical action, every moment of courage, every refusal to accept injustice, now preserved in the very atmosphere of flight. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the Department of Transportation. Dr. Maya Thompson moved deliberately through the corridors, Arya holding tightly to her hand. The atmosphere was quiet, yet alive with an undercurrent of transformation. Every office they passed had screens tracking real-time compliance from regional airports, reflecting a nation beginning to absorb the lessons of Flight AV221 and the ETHRA protocol. "Mommy, are they really changing?" Arya asked, eyes curious yet patient, as though understanding that some lessons took time to take root. "They are," Maya replied, brushing a strand of hair from Arya's forehead. "Some faster than others, some slower, but every single one has to respond now. The sky reminds them." In Philadelphia, Eli Carter monitored a network of airlines adopting the protocol voluntarily. The display showed clusters of green across the country, but a few isolated pockets flickered in yellow or red, signaling minor compliance gaps. "Some smaller carriers are struggling," Eli observed, "not intentionally, just unfamiliar with the system's depth." Maya nodded, considering it's not about speed, it's about thoroughness. We need to mentor them, guide them toward understanding, not just ticking boxes. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, Naomi, the flight attendant inspired by Arya, conducted a training session for newly hired crew members. She emphasized the importance of subtle human cues, acknowledging a passenger's discomfort, offering assistance proactively, and understanding that accountability begins with empathy. The room was silent, the attendants absorbing every word as if it carried the weight of the nation's expectations. Back in D.O., Senator Clara Mitchell convened a panel to discuss the broader implications of the ETHRA protocol across other sectors. Representatives from public transit, healthcare, and education were present, each considering how similar accountability networks could be implemented. Mitchell's voice carried authority. The aviation industry has shown that transparency and real-time ethical oversight can be operationalized successfully. We must now ask, why should other sectors lag behind? Frank DeLuca, still recovering from the initial wave of the protocol's impact, sat in his office surrounded by legal and PR staff. He scrolled through live social media feeds showing families praising the system, flight attendants lauding its clarity, and journalists highlighting compliance scores. The humiliation he felt was tempered by the undeniable truth the industry had changed irreversibly. "We underestimated her," he muttered to no one in particular. "This isn't punishment, it's accountability encoded into our operations. And it's permanent." Across Boston, the public watched live coverage of a school program inspired by Arya's courage. Children recreated scenarios from Flight AV-221 role-playing as passengers and crew, learning to recognize microaggressions and report them without fear. Teachers guided discussions about dignity, respect, and systemic responsibility. Small gestures holding a door, offering help without being asked were framed as lessons in ethical behavior. At Ethra Aerospace headquarters, Maya and Eli convened with FAA officers and technology consultants to review the first 48 hours of Cascade deployment. Every flag, every compliance report, and every adjustment in the system was scrutinized for accuracy. "The early data is impressive," Eli said, pointing at clusters of green metrics. "We're already seeing secondary effects: improved crew interactions, reduced passenger complaints, and faster conflict resolution." Maya allowed herself a small, quiet smile. This is what happens when courage is amplified with systems that respect human dignity. Not everyone has to press a button like Arya. Some just need to know that the button exists and will be watched. Meanwhile, across the country, smaller airports and regional carriers were struggling with implementation. It became clear that education and guidance were as crucial as technology. Regional training sessions began, with staff learning to interpret compliance feedback, adapt their behavior, and respond to subtle passenger cues. The ripple effect was undeniable, even in remote terminals. Employees began considering ethical implications of their decisions in ways previously unheard of. Arya, perched beside her mother in a private briefing room, watched as data streams updated in real time. Her small fingers tapped the edge of her silver pin thoughtfully. "Mommy," she said, "does this mean everyone is learning like me?" Maya nodded, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Yes, baby. The world is starting to listen because of you. It doesn't happen instantly, but every choice, every report, every correction counts. You showed people that being silent isn't the only option." In Chicago, a father and his daughter prepared for a flight under the new regulations. They watched a pre-flight video demonstrating the ethics dashboard and the seat-by-seat monitoring system. The girl's eyes widened. "Dad, it's like the plane can see me." Her father smiled softly. "Not see, baby. Protect you. Because someone insisted it would." At Logan Airport, Maya and Arya joined a ceremonial flight demonstrating fully compliant operations. Crew members moved confidently, aware of the real-time feedback they were receiving. The system corrected missteps gently but firmly, and passengers were visibly relaxed. Families observed quietly, noting the stark difference from previous experiences. Eli leaned over a monitor, showing Maya live compliance scores and behavior flags. "Every alert now results in immediate correction," he said. "Passengers are happier, crew is proactive, and complaints are down 70%. Maya's eyes softened. "This is why we designed it. Real impact isn't measured in headlines, it's measured in lives, in moments of dignity restored." Meanwhile, social media erupted. Short clips of compliant flights, attentive crews, and smiling families were shared endlessly. Hashtags like Bosch Sky Listens, Horse Ethra Impact. Passenger dignity surged. Influencers posted tutorials on ethical travel. Parents shared stories of children feeling safe in spaces that were once hostile. And former airline employees disclosed prior incidents now being prevented. Even Frank DeLuca, watching the live coverage, recognized the inevitability of change. The industry's narrative had shifted. For the first time, Public expectation of accountability outpaced corporate denial. Internal memos at Air Vista shifted tone from damage control to proactive ethics management. Policies were rewritten, training programs expanded, and compliance officers were instructed to report directly to senior leadership rather than filtered chains. Back in Washington, Maya convened a final review of the 42 airports initially locked during the protocol cascade. Every airport had now implemented required systems. Metrics showed that no passenger could now experience a repeat of the AV221 incident without immediate correction and documentation. Arya leaned against her mother, whispering, "Mommy, did we really change everything?" Maya hugged her tightly, a calm gravity in her voice. "No, baby. We reminded people to act, to see, to care. We built a system that magnifies courage. Change is never finished. It ripples outward, and we ride it forward." The sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city. Planes took off in the distance, their paths crisscrossing in orderly, monitored harmony. Every takeoff was a silent testament to accountability. Every passenger's breath a part of a larger ethical equilibrium. As they watched, Eli tapped Maya on the shoulder. The data showing secondary effects in other industries already: public transit, hospitals, even education. The ripple has become a wave. Maya nodded quietly, her gaze fixed on Arya. A single moment of courage can be multiplied 1,000 times if the world is willing to watch, and the world is watching now. Arya's small hand squeezed hers. Then maybe someday, the sky will always listen. "Yes, baby," Maya said, a quiet certainty in her voice. "It will always listen." The wind stirred, brushing past them like a reminder of the vast network of accountability they had set in motion. From the smallest acts aboard Flight AV221 to a nationwide and even global recognition of ethical travel, the echoes of change were profound. Humanity, technology, and courage had converged in a single protocol, and the sky would never forget. The morning light spilled through the tall windows of the Department of Transportation, catching the dust motes in a golden glow that made the otherwise sterile halls feel alive. Dr. Maya Thompson walked briskly beside Arya, her 6-year-old daughter, their footsteps echoing on the marble floors. Today marked the formal unveiling of the National Passenger Dignity Framework, a culmination of years of planning, advocacy, and, above all, a single quiet act of courage aboard Flight AV21. "Mommy, will people really remember the button?" Arya asked, her small fingers tracing the edge of the silver pin pinned to her jacket. Maya smiled softly, adjusting her daughter's collar. "Yes, baby. It's not the button itself, but what it represents: courage, dignity, and the refusal to accept silence. That's a lesson no one can forget." Inside the Grand Hall, reporters, dignitaries, airline executives, and FAA officials gathered, cameras flashing, microphones poised. The framework, displayed on sleek screens along the walls, highlighted every airport, every airline, and every crew member participating in the ethics protocol. Real-time compliance scores pulsed gently, a living testament to the systemic change that had spread across the nation. Eli Carter, standing near the main console, whispered to Maya, "The implementation metrics are astonishing. Every airport now has continuous monitoring, and passenger feedback loops are integrated. Even incidents that would have been considered minor before are now recorded, addressed, and resolved." Maya nodded, her calm presence a steady anchor amid the excitement. It's proof that accountability doesn't have to be loud to be effective. A single action can ripple outward and transform an entire system. Senator Clara Mitchell stepped to the podium, her silver hair catching the morning sun. Ladies and gentlemen, today we witness the fruition of a vision born not in boardrooms or legislative chambers, but in courage. A 6-year-old girl, Aria Thompson, pressed a button when faced with injustice, and the result has been nothing short of revolutionary. This framework ensures that every passenger, regardless of age, race, or circumstance, is protected by a system that sees, hears, and acts. Applause filled the room, but Maya's gaze remained focused on Aria, who was quietly fidgeting with her pin, unaware of the magnitude of her own impact. Across the room, airline executives, some reluctant, some eager, watched the presentation. Frank DeLuca's face was a study in begrudging acknowledgement. The changes had not been optional. Public scrutiny, combined with the system's transparency, had forced every airline to comply. Compliance wasn't just a requirement. It had become a metric tied to reputation, revenue, and public trust. Outside the hall, parents watched live feeds, their children perched on laps or standing beside them. Social media lit up with hashtags, Ithra Protocol, or Sky Listens. Passenger dignity. Stories of children, families, and even flight attendants who had experienced or witnessed small injustices were shared, amplified, and validated. The world had learned to see. Back inside, Maya and Aria moved to the stage. The audience hushed as Senator Mitchell gestured for the mother-daughter pair to speak. Maya stepped forward, her voice steady yet imbued with warmth. Today is not just about policy or systems. It's about the people those systems protect. The Ithra Protocol ensures that dignity is no longer negotiable, that silence is no longer acceptable, and that courage, even the quietest courage, has the power to transform institutions. Aria stood beside her mother, small but composed. She spoke softly into the microphone, her words clear despite her age. I just wanted to be safe. I pressed the button because my mom said I didn't have to yell to be heard, and it listened. A murmur of awe passed through the room. The simplicity of her statement, the clarity of intention, reminded everyone that change often begins with a single, deliberate act. After the speeches, Maya guided Aria to the demonstration area. Here, journalists could see the system in action. Interactive dashboards, seatback compliance indicators, and crew behavior metrics displayed in real time. Children were allowed to explore, pressing simulated buttons and observing how their actions triggered responses within the ethical framework. Eli leaned close to Maya. Even with simulation, the engagement is profound. Children and adults alike are learning that ethics can be operationalized. The system is teaching not by reprimanding, but by showing immediate consequences and resolutions. Maya nodded, a quiet pride in her eyes. And that's how culture changes, not by fear, but by awareness and empowerment. Meanwhile, Frank DeLuca was giving a carefully worded interview to a national news outlet. The Ithra Protocol has been challenging. Yes, he admitted, but it has also been illuminating. Our employees are learning what it means to operate in a system that values dignity above all else. The industry will be stronger for it, in classrooms, across boardrooms, and through social media channels. The story of Aria's courage spread. Teachers used her example to encourage children to speak up for themselves and others. Airline unions cited the framework in their negotiations. Civil rights organizations referenced the protocol in advocacy campaigns. The narrative had transcended the aviation industry. It had become a cultural touchstone. Maya and Aria returned to their hotel suite that evening, the city lights twinkling beneath them. Aria, exhausted but content, sat at the window, tracing lines between the glowing buildings. Mommy, did we really change the world? Maya knelt beside her daughter, her hand gently resting on Arya's small shoulder. "Not the world, baby. But we started it, and every person who sees acts and speaks up carries forward what you began. Change is not finished. It grows. It ripples, and it multiplies." The following week, the FAA published a full report on the implementation of the ETHRA protocol. Every airline, every airport, and every crew member now had publicly visible compliance scores. The report highlighted not only improvements in safety and operational efficiency, but also measurable increases in passenger satisfaction and perceived respect. Social media buzzed with stories of passengers experiencing ethical service for the first time, of flight attendants empowered to intervene appropriately, and of families feeling secure in spaces that had once marginalized them. The ETHRA protocol was no longer theoretical. It was operational, visible, and undeniably effective. Maya received letters from parents across the nation, thanking her for creating a system that empowered their children and restored faith in an industry long criticized for inaction. Some letters came from former flight attendants who had witnessed misconduct and were now able to report it safely. Others came from school principals who had incorporated ethics modules inspired by the protocol into their curricula. Even internationally, airports and airlines began adopting similar monitoring systems. Discussions with regulatory agencies in Europe, Asia, and Africa began, driven by curiosity, admiration, and the undeniable proof of efficacy. The ripple had become a wave, and its origin, a 6-year-old girl refusing to accept silence, was celebrated as a symbolic moment of change. As night fell over Washington, Maya and Arya stood on the balcony overlooking the National Mall. The reflecting pool shimmered in the evening light, mirroring the city and the stars above. "Mommy," Arya whispered, "does the sky remember me?" Maya hugged her tightly, looking up at the clear expanse. "Yes, baby. It remembers your courage, your refusal to be silent, and the way you inspired everyone to act. The sky and the world will always remember." The wind stirred, carrying the promise of continuous accountability. Below, the city lights flickered like sentinels, illuminating streets, homes, and airports that were now part of an enduring legacy. Systems were in place, people were attentive, and the world had learned a crucial lesson. Dignity and courage, however small, could transform institutions and cultures. Arya leaned against her mother, sleepy but radiant. "Mommy, will people always listen now?" "They will try," Maya said softly, brushing a kiss over her daughter's hair. "And when they forget, the systems and the people you inspired will remind them. That is the legacy of the button. From the city streets to the skies above, the ripples of change continued to expand." Airlines embraced transparency. Passengers felt empowered, and even the smallest acts of courage could no longer be ignored. The world had shifted, and it all began with one quiet, deliberate choice, a choice that refused to accept injustice, that pressed the metaphorical button and reminded the sky that every life, every child, every person mattered. This story reminds us that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers quietly, waiting for the right moment to transform an entire system. One small, deliberate action can ripple across communities, institutions, and even nations, creating meaningful change that goes far beyond the immediate situation. It also emphasizes the importance of vigilance, accountability, and the refusal to accept injustice as normal. In our daily lives, whether at work, in public spaces, or even within our families, standing up for dignity, our own or others, has real power. The ETHRA protocol in the story symbolizes the systems we can build in our own spheres to prevent harm and encourage fairness. For older audiences, The story resonates on a personal level. It shows that ethical leadership, empathy, and foresight are timeless values. It teaches that when we combine experience with courage, even seemingly small acts can influence the culture around us. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us to nurture the next generation, empowering them to act with integrity, compassion, and bravery in situations where silence was once the default. Thank you for joining us on this journey of courage, justice, and transformation. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you help spread awareness, celebrate integrity, and inspire others to stand up for what's right.